All right, I did entertain the idea of coming out as like Bilbo or Gandalf, but I figured just the gray beard alone would kind of convey the idea that this is there and back again. Going to not entirely be a talk about the days of yesteryear. That might be the first time I said days of yesteryear from like a talk, so this bodes well for the rest of my career. I do also have only 20 minutes, so my ADHD is going to be fighting against the rabbit holes. We'll try and not go there. I also don't want this to be I don't want it to be viewed as a curmudgeon view of, again, another word I haven't used, view of like, well, I wish we could go back to the way things were 30 years ago. I don't want this to be. I want it to be kind of a reflection and then think about as we look at cloud native and how things change and grow. Yeah, that. So hopefully this would be something that even Bilbo Baggins would be proud of. First off, yes, Jeremy Meiss. I'm a director of developer relations and DevX at a company called OneStream. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Checks in the mail. Not really. I don't use the mail anymore. I also help organize DevOpsDays Kansas City. So that's coming up soon. So hopefully make the trek up there, get a ticket, and join us. So let's start with a little bit of history. This is the idea of looking back for myself. In June, this marks my 30th year in full-time tech. And that is hard to believe. I know I look a lot younger, so just take that for what it's worth. In all seriousness, though, like how many of you are like me? We've spent some time in the industry, and we feel like we're the farmer's insurance guy that we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. How many of you have spent any time that you feel like, oh man, I've seen this come around once or twice? Yeah, okay. So part of this talk is for you. The rest of the talk is for all of us. We'll let you figure out which one is which. So my first job was literally in a data center in the 90s. I went looking for a picture of what a data center in the 90s looked like because I don't have pictures from back then. I didn't think to. I do take offense to this photo site. When I type in 1990s data center photos, this is what they give. We did have color photos back then, just so we're clear for those that weren't born. I'm not even going to ask how many of you were born in the 2000s. But we like color photos, and we did not use phones like that, where we have to crank in. Like, that wasn't the deal. The computers, though, the rest of it's kind of similar, but we did have color photos, so I feel pretty attacked. I mean, to think about like what color photos looked like in '95. This was my color photos, my graduation photos. So this is proof that color photos do exist. I'm going to change this quickly so that no one gets a photo of it. Thank you. Fantastic. Yes, successful. I did eventually move into like the network operating center, where like from this small ISP, that was where my desk was. I was doing SysAdmin, network admin. I was installing ISDN. Who remembers ISDN? Which was so much better than DSL. I was doing that back in installing that in Kansas City before I turned 21. I was even using the original iOS. Who remembers what that was? Cisco Internetwork Operating System. That was programming, Cisco's 2500s, Cisco 7000s. And in fact, I had a Cisco 7000 on my desk, which looked like a dorm refrigerator. Sounded like one as well. But I did have a dedicated T1, which that was, back then, 1.544 megabits a second was the transfer. It was amazing. Now, like, you could, that's on a slow day, or if you use Comcast. But those were days, like all of us back then, we were kind of figuring things out as we went. We didn't have a lot of the, information we have now. We were learning on the job. Who doesn't like accidentally mess up internet routes, bring down portions of the internet with routing loops and route flapping. Routing leaks as well. Who also knows that that's something, not just a dance that's on TikTok? Okay, yeah, it's a routing, routing flaps are not not a TikTok dance, though it could be after this. Who also knows that BGP, the Border Gateway Protocol, was invented here in 1989 in Austin at an IETF meeting. It was on the back of some napkins, so that's why it was commonly referred to as the two-napkin protocol. There's the napkins, pictures of napkins. You can find that on Wiki and all those other places. But in the early 2000s, I went to Sprint, where I survived 11 years. If anyone worked at Sprint, you understand surviving 11 years was really what it was. I ended up being shadow IT for the whole network services department. Who has been or still is shadow IT? Yeah, when IT doesn't actually get the job done and you just have to do it yourself, figure it out. That's what we did. I was automating, migrating, intricate Excel spreadsheets and access databases to ASP, not ASP.NET, classic ASP, and MySQL, which was before it got bought by Oracle. I even had a whole server farm underneath my desk, and by server farm I mean literally 3 Dell Optiplex GX260s that were fully loaded with RAM and hard drives, and we're doing VMware and VirtualBox. That was our server farm that I ran all of network services on underneath my desk. Couldn't find a good image of what my desk looked like, so Claude created this great example of a computer with 3 computers underneath the desk. So you just have to let your imagination kind of figure out what my cubicle looked like. But back then, there was no such thing as cloud computing. It was all about bare metal servers, virtualization. Who remembers like the days of having to physically rack and stack servers in a data center? Okay, that whole process, like the thrill of getting that new server, having to install everything from scratch. It was like Christmas morning, but with more sweat and tears and blood. Who else still has scars from from the servers? Like you come and look, I have scars from servers because evidently the engineers creating the servers didn't know that you could actually file down the steel, so it wasn't nearly as sharp, or they just really wanted to, inflict pain. I'm also wondering about the amount of DNA that can be found inside of servers that are in racks in data centers, and what the archaeologists in the future are going to wonder: when did we actually become sentient? The joke's on them. The process to get a server was a long, drawn-out process. You had to go out to Dell, you had to spec what you wanted, then you had to send it to IT procurement for them to approve it, and then your manager to approve it, and then they had to get ordered, and sometimes that could take a few months for it to get ordered, built, and sent. Then you had to wait for your, like I said, hardware. The process took a few months. Meanwhile, you had to submit IT tickets to let them know a server was being shipped to a data center. They had to tell you which data center, and then you had to, you needed space in that data center. They would eventually assign a rack, and then you had to submit a different ticket to a different team to schedule a time for you to come into the data center, and then you had to go set that up, and then another time to get the cabling run, and all these things had to take place. And so from the time to order to the time to actually being there, it could take a few months. It also could take, I had one server that ordered, took 6 months to get from order to procurement, or to shipment. And that wasn't even because a pandemic, or because a container ship turned sideways in a canal. That was back in the early 2000s. And that was just building servers in the late 90s and early 2000s. Think about all the things we had to do back then. We had to manually configure things, just about everything from network settings to the operating system itself. There was some automation that happened that you had to build yourself. If something went wrong, well, good luck, because a lot of times you didn't have the online systems in place to go and search for things. We didn't have the luxury of cloud providers and the fancy dashboards. There was no ClickOps that we have now. We had to rely on our own wits and a lot of trial and error. Any of you ever spent time in the SysAdmin subreddit? Yeah, there's a great thread on how was things in the 90s, and how was server management in 2000. Great thread of some great stories. Also, who knows what BOFH stands for? Bastard Operator from Hell. It's a fantastic, you should check that out. I will have these links in the slide deck, and you'll be able to click on those. Great read. But like I said, there was no documentation. There were the times if a power switch got kicked, you had to drive 30 minutes to get it, flip the switch again, and then wait. Or that you had to drive to a different state to recover data because the bandwidth was as fast as a car loaded with tapes could drive, as opposed to trying to do it over the internet. Or your networking. We didn't update things until we had to, which oddly enough is very similar to today, more often than we want to admit. And also the large binders of CDs that we would have to just install something within the data centers. Or the huge, for every application that was in your department was in those containers. It was not something you could just, hey, I want to install that, and it pulls it down from some repo or just does a cloud install. Or the fact that hotspot or hot swap, I think really was a myth because no one really used SCSI back then. Even though if you said you did, I really seriously doubt it, at least in production. But hot swap, it really wasn't a thing until later. And of course, there was SneakerNet. So, the whole idea of sharing files or moving things between systems. Who remembers this movie, Office Space? Perfect example of when the SneakerNet idea. Hey, let's just copy things from a disk, hand it to someone else. Let's go. Obviously, this was about a virus that was going to get a malware that was going to be put in to earn a couple penny, fractions of a penny. That obviously didn't work out as well. But to say that we've seen a lot of change in the IT industry in just a relatively short time is, I think, saying a lot because we've seen so much change. What began in the 90s as really a tangible world of a lot of physical servers, and even pre-90s, but I'm talking about from my perspective, requiring a lot of manual racking and configuration, constant hands-on, has evolved into a very abstracted, automated, service-oriented landscape, and also one that requires a lot of zooming in and reading to try and find stuff. If you haven't seen the CNCF landscape, this is a few months old, so it's probably changed, and it is interesting to kind of see all the different, cloud-native foundation stuff that's out there, but it's not really just an incremental improvement, but a real fundamental shift in how we look at things. When we have the ability to look at, I need CI/CD. Well, what are my options out there? Well, you can go here and you can click and you see the options. We didn't have that back then. You just had to go to your local borders or Circuit City or some of the other shops back then to kind of find what things you wanted to install. We started with bare metal, and now we have cloud-native computing. But at the end of the day, we just want stuff that works. Thank you, Douglas Adams, for really kind of laying it out there. We just want stuff that works. So we no longer have to really worry about a lot of those physical servers in data centers. We can spin up new instances in minutes, sometimes even seconds, depending on what you're trying to do. We can scale our applications to meet demand without breaking a sweat, or at least most of us. Some people still are doing those things. Back where it used to be one server per application, now it's thousands of applications per server. There is still someone that is there racking the servers, that is still manning it, but it's on an entirely different scale than what we did even 30 years ago, even 20 years ago. Now, we've seen so much of that change. So that transformation still brings a lot of challenges that we still have to kind of keep in mind. In some ways, they are the same as the old challenges, but we have to look at them in a different way. Security, scalability, cost management, those things, they're all still valid, but the pace of change is so much faster than ever before. How many of you have to, within your job, have to think about, hey, what's going to be our next thing that we're, next platform we have to do, or what's our next version, or what's even our next infrastructure going to look like? It's kind of like the pace of change. Has it not, it's not 6 months or a year down the road. It's like weeks, months, days of, what you have to account for. So this journey from those constraints to the flexibility that we see with cloud native, even in some hybrid environments, where we've abstracted a lot of that manual kind of work, all was for a reason, and has had many different stages. So, we started with a lot of the limitations that we had with bare servers at the scale which we had, which led us to looking at new ways. Which that was the rise of virtualization and the ability to run multiple operating systems and applications on a single physical server to improve a lot of that utilization of resources. So that that was things like blades. Who remembers when the first blades came out? You just slide it out, slide it back in. VMware, VirtualBox, those things started to come out in the early 2000s, gave us some of that ability to make better use of resource. It was then followed by, we saw a lot more, really the virtual Rent-A-Center, call that cloud computing, virtual Rent-A-Center, trademark that. You can use it if you want. But it allowed us, we're renting compute from someone else. We're renting all those different resources on demand as we need them. I can't tell you how many times I've spun up a DigitalOcean droplet for 5 minutes to test something out and go, nope, not going to use that tool, and drop it and get charged like 15 cents. I'm making that number up. I don't remember how much it was. It was a small amount from what it actually was. And then we've seen, as DevOps has really kind of come in as a natural result, a natural movement, we've seen kind of that shift towards trying to bring more collaboration, automating things further, and accelerated kind of that transformation that we've seen. We've also seen, the idea of breaking down a lot of those silos between your different teams. We've still not fully realized that, but I think we're in a lot better position and having better conversations about that than we did even 10 years ago. Docker popularized kind of the containerization idea so that applications could be further abstracted away in a way that was more standardized than what we had kind of started to do. And then we've seen really these orchestration platforms that now have popped up, like even Kubernetes and others that have really emerged to manage all of that stuff at scale. Now, it doesn't mean that Kubernetes is the right thing for you. I'm not saying that. It probably isn't. But things like that, there are other orchestration platforms that are better suited for what you do. So, and then there's what's that next thing? There may be, the next as we've kind of hit that, we've seen a lot of a renewed focus on observability. There's the observability 3.0 kind of mindset that's out. I'm sure Honeycomb has some things to talk about if you want to talk to them. But there's, what are those next things that we have to start paying attention to? These technological and cultural shifts have yielded a lot of cloud native themselves, characterized by microservices, continuous delivery, automated management, and so much more. So from those early days, I'm going to go real quickly through kind of this, the things we've had, the system admin, from automation. We used to have disks that would do this. This was Windows 95. I'm sorry, DOS 6.2, Windows 95, and then Microsoft Office. That was the disks to do those. To now we have infrastructure as code can help us automate the expansion that we might need to do. Standardization, we've seen the different servers and components that work together. The attempts to get different components to work together was about as easy as it is to try and find different, what the different connectors are, how to work those together. Now we have, standardized APIs, gateways, REST API that will help translate that data, so we don't have to try and figure out what works. Everything talks generally better. Increasing capacities of systems. Physically we used to have to do it months. Now we can just, have different. Really, you have the ability to have 6 different levels of scaling or 6 different ways to say scaling, because this is AWS. So, how many different things you can call something. We've also been able to withstand a lot of failure, resilience. We used to have, who remembers Veritas backup exec? Now we have, very simple, relatively, ways of now having clusters that are independent instances. Protecting our systems and data, it's always been really important. We used to have firewalls for entire things. Now we have kind of built into DevSecOps kind of idea is like, let's have it from the very beginning instead of just rely on a piece of equipment to try and keep us safe. So as Gandalf said, we are where we are today because of the journey we've taken and the lessons we've learned. I think this is what he meant by this. So far, for those of us who's going to be working on the systems of the future, you've arrived at the right time. There is a lot out there. I think, as we see things like the practitioner experience of using tools, AI, great, fine, but the experience, I think, is going to have to be something that's very much a part of the next piece. The different cloud-native principles that we've seen, the cloud boundaries, the ways we can use it now, I think are going to be the next thing for us to think about. Sustainability, we don't always need a new server. Repurpose what you have. I think that kind of focus, be a lot more efficient in what we do. Continuing the open ecosystem, we've seen that under attack a lot recently. So that's something that I think those that are going to be carrying us on, that's going to have to be at the top of mind for you. So we have to continue to grow and learn. We can't get comfortable with the way things are, and I say that for all of us that are, the graybeards to the young ones, the younglings, I don't know. And we have to be ready for it. So with that, hopefully we kind of think about things new and different. Thank you, appreciate it. You can find me on these things. I list my old Twitter. I should probably just take it off here. I'm not on there anymore. But I will be posting these slides and happy to answer any questions afterwards, and I'll be around. So thank you.